A figure often overlooked in the narrative of the succession dispute over England in 1066 is that of Edgar Aetheling. Rarely mentioned in the accounts of this pivotal time in English history in favor of Kings Harold and William, Edgar represented the dying flame of Anglo-Saxon resistance in the wake of the defeat at the Battle of Hastings, being elected the last Anglo-Saxon King of England. Edgar was born in the year 1052 to Edward, son of the short-reigned Edmund Ironside, and his wife Agatha. Edward, an infant when his father died in 1016, had spent his life traveling across Christian Europe before finally ending up in the Kingdom of Hungary. The family's luck would turn soon after Edgar's birth, with King Edward the Confessor, King of England, recalling the exiled Edward to return and be his heir. This was due to the need for a clear succession within the royal family, thanks to the pious king's lack of children. The aforementioned luck soon ran out, however, with Edward passing away shortly after arriving back in England in 1057. This left the question of succession open once again due to Edgar's youth. King Edward would pass in 1066 without a designated successor. The influence of the powerful Earl of Wessex, Harold Godwinson, within the kingdom was enough to get himself elected king by the witan. His rule would be challenged by powerful claimants, however, namely King Harold of Norway and Duke William of Normandy. This would culminate in a series of battles, resulting in the death of King Harold at the Battle of Hastings, losing to Duke William. Following Harold's death, remaining prominent English figures, including Aldred, the Archbishop of York, wished for Edgar to be king, seeing it as his birthright. One act during this period which points towards the broad support for Edgar as king was the selection of a new abbot for Peterborough. The choice for successor was sent to Edgar for royal assent, which he gladly gave. This arrangement would not last long, however, as William's preeminent position in the kingdom saw many English nobles give up any hope of unified resistance, and William was crowned king on Christmas Day of 1066. William became surprisingly friendly with Edgar following his coronation, and reportedly bestowed him with many honors and lands, according to William of Poitiers, and Edgar settled into life in the city of York. This arrangement would come undone by 1068, however, with a wave of native unrest targeted against William. It is unclear whether or not Edgar had any part in this period of unrest, but it is speculated that King Malcolm III, King of Scotland, was preparing an invasion into the north on Edgar's behalf, supported by Gospatrick, Earl of Northumbria. William's quick response to the unrest, however, caused tensions to momentarily dissipate, and Edgar fled into exile in Scotland. Tensions would flare up once more in the following year of 1069 with a general English revolt against William in the north, alongside a Scottish invasion. King Malcolm married Edgar's sister Margaret, and used this relationship as justification to help his brother-in-law in his claim on the English crown. The Danish King Sweyn also joined the fight, and the Anglo-Danish force was able to advance on York, wiping out its Norman garrison. King William was able to eventually get the upper hand over his enemies, driving out the Danes and leading an invasion into Scotland, forcing Malcolm to make peace with William with the Treaty of Abernethy in 1072. This treaty saw Malcolm swear allegiance to William, and Edgar was temporarily forced to leave Scotland, taking refuge in Flanders. Returning to Scotland in 1074, he married the sister of Earl Gospatrick, who now found himself a lord in Scotland upon the exile from England. Edgar soon after received an offer from Philip, King of France, offering him the castle of Montreuil, from which he would be able to menace William's Normandy holdings. Edgar was not able to take the king up on his offer, however, being shipwrecked and narrowly making it back to Scotland. Following this failure, he was compelled by Malcolm to finally seek reconciliation with William. William graciously accepted Edgar back after 6 years of hostility, integrating him into the English court. It is at this point that Edgar disappears from the historical record for over a decade, with nothing being known for certain for the remainder of William's reign. It is likely, however, that during this time period he became friends with William's eldest son, Robert Curthose, a relationship which would prove consequential for Edgar in the future. William would pass away in 1087, with the realm divided between his sons William Rufus, who was made King of England, and Robert, who became Duke of Normandy. Following the death of William, Edgar renounced his allegiance to the new king and ventured to the Norman lands of Sicily with a retinue of soldiers. While presumably a very thrilling chapter in the Ætheling's life, the sources once again fall short here, and we know nothing of Edgar until his return to England by around 1091. Conflict between King William II and Duke Robert had been raging during his absence, with William eventually gaining the upper hand against his older brother, forcing him to make peace, and the brothers were eventually reconciled. The subsequent peace agreement saw Edgar once again exiled, returning to the court of his Scottish brother-in-law. Edgar seems to have persuaded Malcolm to launch a raid into England, with William answering this threat, marching his army north. Battle was able to be averted, with Edgar and Robert negotiating terms for the two kings. Malcolm once again submitted to the English, and Edgar was allowed to travel back to Normandy with Robert, but soon returned back to Britain. Soon after the peace, Malcolm invaded England for the final time, being slain alongside his eldest son by Margaret, Edward, in 1093. This opened up a power struggle in Scotland between the brother of Malcolm, Donald Bane, and Duncan, Malcolm's son from his first marriage. Edgar returned to Scotland during this struggle, taking up the cause of Margaret and Malcolm's remaining children. King William appears to have recognized the eponymously named Edgar, son of Margaret, as the true Scottish king, and aided him alongside Edgar Aetheling in raising a force to take the throne, defeating King Donald in 1097. This victory would cement Anglo-Norman influence over the Scottish kingdom for centuries to come, with the old Gaelic ways and nobility waning over time. This feat was greatly facilitated by the actions of the Ætheling and would have a profound effect on the trajectory of the kingdom. With the Scottish succession matter finally settled and his feud with the Normans behind him, Edgar was ready to turn his attention towards the events unfolding in the Levant, which would eventually give way to the First Crusade. Edgar took up the cross in 1097, journeying to the Holy Land. What role Edgar had in the coming events has been hotly contested over the centuries. The 12th century English chronicler, Orderic Vitalis, wrote that Edgar, commanding an English fleet to the Levant, distinguished himself greatly during the siege of Antioch, taking the city under his protection and dutifully transferring it to Duke Robert following victory. However, the lack of any other accounts to back this tale up, including within the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle itself, means we cannot be wholly sure to what extent, if any, Edgar played a role towards the Crusader victory at Antioch. At the very least, historians are in agreement that he was in Palestine for pilgrimage in 1102, as is told by the 12th century monk and historian, William of Malmesbury. Satisfied with his service in the Holy Land, Edgar began to make his way back home. This, according to William, saw him travel through the lands and courts of both the Byzantine and Holy Roman emperors, who showered him with gifts in the hope that he would join their retinue. Edgar, however, refused and continued on to Britain. King William had passed while Edgar was away, and the new English king, Henry, had married Edgar's niece Edith in the year 1100. Still, Edgar maintained his loyalty to his old friend Duke Robert and joined him in Normandy in 1106 when he rebelled against his younger brother. This rebellion, however, would soon go down in defeat, with both Edgar and Robert captured at the Battle of Tinchebray. King Henry, perhaps due to their new familial connection, did not view Edgar as a threat and released him soon after. Deciding that he had had enough adventures for a lifetime, Edgar retired to his estates where he would live out the rest of his days in relative obscurity. William of Malmesbury, writing in the 1120s, wrote that Edgar was still alive, tending to his lands, with this being the last information ever given of the last true king of the English. Edgar, despite losing his throne almost as soon as receiving it, proved to be a consequential figure in the history of not just England, but Scotland as well. His leadership led to his namesake becoming Scottish king, and his political maneuvering in England ensured the family's continued relevance in their former kingdom, through personal alliances and royal marriages. A crusader and a pilgrim, he forsook continental power and prestige for, according to William, the love of his native country. A true exemplar of the romanticized image of a wandering medieval nobleman, he managed to live out his final years in peace.